Welcome back. I am joined by Dr. Brett Manassa, a adjunct professor here in the local DFW area. Dr. Brett, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, doing great. Yeah. I teach counseling and psychotherapy,
Awesome.
and I'm
And
a psychotherapist myself. So,
okay, fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. And yes, counseling, psychotherapy, mental health, these are very important topics in today's world, especially given the landscape, which I think is a great place to start. Our overall landscape today with mental health and counseling and behavioral patterns with with the advent of social media and smartphones and devices, what is your kind of overall view on our world today with that?
well, like everything, it's a mixed blessing. I mean, nuclear power was an amazing thing that happened. It provided, but it also has some horrible side effects. So, technology is similar. There's some fantastic things about technology and being connected and but there are also some downsides. And the biggest downside that I see is just the lack of connection that people truly have. It's like they're connected but disconnected at the same time. And so just an actual lack of connection with people in real life.
Yes.
IRL, in fact, they have an acronym for
Mhm.
real life,
Yes.
but there's not a lot of connection between people in real life. And then the second, I think, is just a raising of the bar of what we expect to be entertained with. It's like our expectations of what's going to hold our attention is so high that anything that doesn't meet that bar, we can't pay attention to it.
Yes.
So, lack of connection and lack of attention and focus really is what's happening, I think.
Absolutely. And especially with the younger generation. I myself have graduated 13 plus years now and have been in the workforce for that long and more. And in my mid 30s now. And uh, having gone through my own mental health journey for sure. And having done my own little research, which you could consider rudimentary, um, I start to see patterns all over and within people I know, and including loved ones, and especially family members, if we're being honest. And
Mm.
so, and the more I see it, the more apparent it becomes, you know? And yeah, I would you say that the younger generation or maybe the this current Gen Z and younger, would you say it's more prevalent in this generation than previous generations, or uh, do you have any kind of grasp on the changes? So,
I think it's gradually happened over many decades. And yes, the people that are the most susceptible to it are the ones that get introduced to it at the youngest age. Um, just life in general is sped up. If I used to like to watch reruns from the 70s of TV shows, and I haven't watched the Rockford Files in probably 30 years. That was a detective show with Jim Rockford that came on in the early 70s, and he drove a Firebird, and he was a cool guy. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've got that on Hulu. I'm going to go watch all the old episodes of the Rockford Files. And I couldn't stand them because after 30 years of not having watched them, they are so slow and plodding. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you could have edited that. We don't have to see him walking all the way across the parking lot. It's, and I noticed that my attention has really gone down. I can't watch these old things. I have recordings of old radio shows from the 30s and 40s, and
wow.
the just because I'm kind of into old radios, and I have recordings of old shows. And back in the day, they were so slow. It just so even now, and I got late to the technology game. I got my first home computer when I was 25, maybe 26. And this was probably in the mid 90s. And
Right.
I remember at that time thinking to myself, why would anybody need a computer at home?
Hmm.
You know, because I had one at work, of course, but when I got home, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
So if I can notice how fast things are, I just imagine what if you were born in this fast age and that's all you've ever known?
Yes. Absolutely. And I've said this myself, and this is very uh, it's kind of inherently known, especially if you're a millennial like myself. Anyone born between 82 and 96, where I was born in the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s. Um, we're considered the last generation to have grown up in childhood without like the advent of the internet and technology, like from a very young age.
Hmm.
And I don't have to go into too much detail, but like we already know, like uh, when we were younger, we this is gonna not probably doesn't happen anymore, but uh, parents would let their kids go off, ride their bikes to anywhere and everywhere,
Yeah,
and come back before the sun goes down or the light turns on, without actually knowing where they actually are,
yeah.
and no way to find them either. Yeah.
Oh. Is that the way things are now, or is that the way? Because I was almost thinking that's the way things were when I grew up, when
Yes.
we didn't have cell phones. Um, yeah, if I went for a bike ride with my friends, I could be gone all day. My mom would never have any idea where I was, and it didn't freak her out because she wasn't worried about a kidnapper on every street corner. I mean, the world was different.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean to be the old man that says, "Oh, things were better in my day," but it was slower and it was more innocent, maybe because we didn't know. You know, I'm willing to bet that yes, kids got kidnapped and bad things happened in the world, but we didn't know about them. So maybe we lived in naivete. But anyway, there is,
Yeah.
as Emily Dickinson said, the world is too much with us.
Mm.
And she said that back in the early 1800s, 1830s ish. The
Mhm.
world is too much with us, and let's get away from the world and think of how much worse that is today, how much more we need to get away from the world sometimes.
That is beautifully said. Absolutely. Um, and yeah, we were quickly discussing earlier. I wonder if we're going to get to a point as a society. This is a very good question because of the rapid pace of technological innovation, especially with AI now here at the forefront, and it could mass affect the entire job market and
Mm,
future of many careers. I'm trying not to be doom and gloom, but it doesn't look too great in many areas, in many cases. And honestly, I in within my own family and within my own kind of circle, I've seen this impacting the mental health of the younger generation big time. Simply the fear of technological innovation to such a degree that they are not going to find any you know potential in their area or in their careers or whatever. So that's not helping. But yes, we've never been at a time that technology has been so integrated in our daily life, right? And
yeah.
checking email was like such a big deal in early days, and a very became a very normalized thing. But now that you people are on their screens for unfortunately even more than 10 hours a day, which is really bad.
Mm,
And so now the only I know that Apple has it can set limitations to how much you have your phone screen. I'm sorry, screen time, and kind of like it can shut off apps after a certain amount of time. So I see that is one way of solving the problem, but I just wonder, do you think in a societal way can we attack this to improve the quality of human life?
it's one of those catch 22s. I mean, yes, we could regulate things that are bad for us, And the harsher the regulations, the more we can actually stamp it out, you know?
Yeah.
But we would be so regulated that no one would want to live there. You know, every attempt to stop something, prohibition failed, the war on drugs is a failure.
Yeah.
Not because I think alcohol and drugs are great for society, it's just prohibiting them or trying to limit them or restrict them doesn't stop them. And even you were talking about Apple has settings where you can limit if you are an adult and you're limiting your own self by using Apple's, they won't do it against your will they?
No.
No, you have to choose. I want you to put this restriction on me.
Yes.
It's like telling your friend when you go to a restaurant, I want you to stop me and don't let me have this entire portion.
Yeah.
Stop me when I've only had half so I can put the other half in a doggy bag and take it home.
Absolutely.
No, no, we want the whole damn thing. We want to eat it. And
Yeah.
we can want to stop ourselves, but we'll get to that limit and it'll shut us off and we'll say, oh, just another 10 minutes more and we'll get on, and it's very addictive in that way.
It's very addicting.
Mhm.
And I've heard research that social media, and honestly, I'm guilty of it, but I try to create systems for me to limit my social media usage, which honestly, it's mostly social media because like you're otherwise you're just texting people that you text, or you're
Right.
part of a chat group and maybe you message here and there. Maybe you're communicating like we have a goal, like we're trying to meet at a certain place and time, so that's communication only. um, if you want to send funny things or memes nowadays or links to funny videos, you can do that. um, that is simply a that's just a break from a day of intense focus on like actual work, right? And that's really all that's for. But if you're not busy with a like particular job or studying something or creating something, then your mind goes adrift. And the easiest thing to do is just, oh, let me keep scrolling. Let me keep going on the next thing. And um, I'm happy to say I don't have TikTok specifically because my time is going to be completely destroyed. I will not accomplish anything. And
Yeah.
uh, as a professional who works full time plus has a dog and plus cooking, cleaning, all the adult stuff that one has to do. I'm not married yet, to my family chagrin, but one day, and that's a whole nother topic too. But um, yeah, your time flies for sure, right? So we have to delegate ourselves and to manage ourselves with our time usage. So I certainly have to do that. But there are many younger generation or folks who they're so used to doing that, like scrolling. We just call it doom scrolling
For
um,
hours and hours and hours,
for
right?
hours and hours. It's doing kind of irreparable damage to their psyche. Now they can't even sit down for 10 minutes with anyone, you know?
Mm-mm. No, because real life is not as entertaining as any video you ever want to watch right in your hand. Real life is not that entertaining.
Sure.
Although I take it back. I mean, real life is incredibly rich if you pay attention, you know? And that's what has, I think that's partly why mindfulness has kind of evolved as well.
Yes.
Um, that is an ancient practice, going back to Hindus and Buddhists. So it's been known by mankind for thousands of years to meditate, to quiet, to deeply breathe.
Yes.
But in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s, it started to come off or come across into Western medicine psychologists found, hey, this actually helps. Wow. A person who is really anxious can do some deep breathing and mindfulness meditation, and they can be just as calm as they would be if I had given them a Xanax.
Yes.
So then it's funny. It took Western scientists to kind of put their stamp of approval on it. And now it's all part of psychology. We learn about mindfulness in the classes that I teach, how counselors can. But we got on that topic because it's almost like a dovetail. It's like with the rise of technology
Yes,
going back to the 80s and early 90s, and it has only gotten faster and faster and faster. Maybe there's some correlation with this need for mindfulness and quiet to
absolutely.
counterbalance it.
I could not agree more, 100%. And I'm very grateful to have explored mindfulness and meditation myself. And
Mm.
it is one of the single biggest difference makers in a more positive mental health and mental status for me. And having done some work, yeah, inner work myself, I pray other people also find this on their own and want to do that. Um, but yeah, it's Elon Musk himself has said like what social media essentially is a hijack of our Olympic system. And
Mm.
it's simply like it's simply feeding hitting dopamine receptors on a such a fast um succession,
Yeah,
it's almost like a hit of cocaine or something. Like
it exactly is. Yeah, that's that's what addiction is. It is a hijacking of that. And in fact, it's called the pleasure pathway. It's deep in the limbic system,
yeah.
between the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental area. I'm not a neuroscientist, and I don't know exactly what those words mean, but I know that that's a part of the brain where a lot of dopamine flows when you are experiencing pleasure.
Yes.
And that system evolved to reward us for doing things that are good for us. There's a reason why a luscious orange or an apple or mango, you want to eat one of those and you don't want to take a bite into a raw rutabaga or an onion,
Absolutely.
because there are more nutrients in the fruit than there are in the onion. And so things that are good for us, like sugars, the body runs on sugars,
Yeah.
give us pleasure. And what else gives us pleasure? Fat, salt, grease. We like potato chips and fries. Well, there's a reason why those taste good, because our body requires salt. Sodium is required for the functioning of our nervous system. And fat, that's to keep us alive in the winter. So our bodies evolved in a period where there weren't Hostess cupcake trees, you
Yes.
know? So we evolved in a very different world where we had to remember, oh, wow, I want to eat that apple and not that rutabaga, you
Yes.
know? Um, I want to make sure I get all of this fat from this animal because I don't know when I'm going to eat again.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's a built-in positive reward system. We eat things that are good for us and we get a rush of dopamine.
Absolutely.
Other things are good for us too. And I'm going on a lecture because I'm a college professor. So
No, please, Professor. That's why we want you here.
jump in. I tell my students sometimes, I say, I'm really good at filling up the airtime. So jump in and just interrupt me if you have a point that you want to make, and I'll try to be
Yeah,
better about that.
absolutely. But in my research and in the content I've consumed, it 100% supports this entire
Yeah.
theory and concept that social media addiction is the same as that, and
It's yeah,
it is hijacking.
anything that's addictive.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it hijacks this natural thing in our body that was evolved to encourage us to do things that are good for us. If you have a conversation with an old friend
Yeah.
and you get that warm feeling of being close to another person is dopamine in the pleasure center. Because why? Being social and connected with other people is good for us,
Yes.
you know? So drugs of abuse produce so much dopamine that somehow our brain is tricked into thinking now wow, if this is good for us, this methamphetamine must be really, really, really good for us.
Yeah,
And then we get sucked into that. And then because nothing else produces as much dopamine, then nothing else is as satisfying. An orange isn't as satisfying as
yeah,
a hit of meth. It's just
100%.
not.
Yeah,
And while it's frying your brain out, it's not good for you. It's literally killing you, but you're getting this positive reinforcement while you do it.
yeah,
And that's the hijacking part, where
yeah,
in real life is not as satisfying as something artificial. You know, an apple or an orange is not as satisfying as a drug. A
yeah.
conversation with a loved one is not as satisfying as doom scrolling.
Yes.
Real life is not as satisfying as this artificial flood of
Yeah.
dopamine.
It's we're at a this is a new era, if you will. It's a new era and society has evolved and we're seeing the implications of this kind of in real time now. In recent episodes I'm reacting to podcasts about the birth rate crisis and how modern dating is a total mess and I can tell you for sure I myself am single and many people I know are and that's a whole nother rabbit hole but it does certainly correlate to the advent of technology and social media taking over.
Mm.
It has affected us psychologically for sure on a mass level. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I was gonna say, I'm already thinking about when I'm a father one day. I'm already thinking about that, and I pray that young parents or future parents also think like this. That you're gonna have to decide how your future child's relationship with technology is going to be. Like you should decide that early on, and not just like, oh, they're crying, let me give you a phone and like mess up your dopamine system, or you know what I'm saying? Because like
Yeah.
the I've done research and I've seen that it has a very negative impact to a because the prefrontal cortex isn't even fully formed for like 20 something years, I guess.
Yeah. Easily mid 20s.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I believe it's different for boys and girls, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, I guess. Um but for a child, like it's even what worse uh the exposure to this like nonstop dopamine machine in the form of these smartphones, right? So I'm gonna limit them as much as possible to in one day when I'm a father.
Well, when I'm counseling adolescents, that is the number one thing that kids and their parents fight about is trying to limit phone time. And on the one hand, I tell the parents that taking away their phone completely or banning them from social media is like cutting them off from the world. I mean, that's how they interact with friends, that's how they stay connected to a certain degree. But at the same time, too much of it is exceptionally damaging, you
Yes.
know? What I tell them, I tell parents that see, my grandfather grew up on a farm and he was driving tractors and shooting guns when he was 11 years old. I mean, great big tractors. I mean,
Yeah.
and I tell my parents sometimes that those were the tools that people used to live, and they were taught how to use them responsibly, you know? So if the internet and social media are the tools of the 21st century, our kids need to be taught how to use them responsibly
Yes.
because they're just as dangerous as guns.
That's true.
You know, I mean, in a metaphorical way, you can't blow your brains out with a smartphone, but metaphorically, they're dangerous as guns, and but they're necessary. So we need to learn how to
Exactly.
respect them like someone would respect a firearm.
That's well said, Professor. Yes. And there hasn't been enough data until more recently as to the effects of social media on a human brain, especially a younger, undeveloped human brain. And these effects are now starting to become studied more, and we have a lot more data and studies from that. there's only one country that I'm aware of in my minimal research that has actually they put a age limit now on you can't not have social media below a certain age, and that's Australia.
Hmm.
Australia implemented, yeah, we can look it up, that I think it started last year or just within the past couple of years, that until you're the age of 16 or up, you can't even have a social media account, or more. And TikTok has certainly, that's been a hot topic because that's the new Gen Z thing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there. I mean, it's essentially creating ADHD like this, because
Mhm.
3 seconds isn't enough. Like, oh, 3 seconds next, 3 seconds next, and
Yes.
yeah, and this
Because
carries over.
reading a book is not stimulating enough.
Yeah,
I mean, when you compare it to, on a video screen, reading a book is not stimulating enough. But if you quiet yourself and you actually let the book hypnotize you and draw you in, reading a book can be so much more satisfying than
yeah,
it's
constant
it.
flooding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just we're frying ourselves out, basically. You know,
absolutely.
we're frying out our capacity to think and reason, and it's not a good thing.
And you know what? Come to think of it, I this reminds me, when I was in school myself, there was no AI for sure. That's starting to take over. We actually had to write papers from forming our own ideas and our own conclusions and reading a topic, and
Yeah,
actually write them. I'm curious as to your experience with students now are using AI to write papers for them. And uh,
yeah,
I don't know if you've seen, there was a there's one social media post that went viral. It's a UCLA graduate in the graduation ceremony. He had his chat GPT prompt showing, this is what I use to pass my papers. Like, oh my god, dude. Like, and it's crazy because from what I understand, students are using AI to do their homework or write papers, and now professors have to use AI to detect that AI is being used. And
yeah.
it's like a machines have now doing school for you. Like, what's going on? I don't know if you experienced that.
No, definitely, definitely. That's why now I teach graduate students. So it might be a little different in undergraduate courses, but in graduate school, at least when you're teaching counseling and psychology and things like that, students are encouraged to introspect. So every one of my papers assignments, I don't say, give me a history of this theory.
Yeah,
I try not to give it something that AI could write. I say, take the concepts of that theory and apply it to your experience growing up with my family, my father, my culture, my city, and how this theory, uh, or how your personal experience either resonates with what the theorist said or how your personal experience does not resonate with what the theorist said.
yeah,
So I try to make papers to where they can't really just outsource it to GPI or G whatever it is.
yeah. Chat GPT, and this takes me back to the regulation question. Wow. For example, the students are prone to want, if they can find a shortcut, if they can find a way to pass a test with doing the minimal work required. As a former student, I know I would probably try to.
I know too. I was a student. I
Right.
definitely do. Yeah.
I guess we all had like certain tools or certain tricks for that. We used to do Spark. I guess we used Spark Notes back in the day to kind of summarize a book, like without having
Yeah.
to actually read it. Um and and you have to describe it in your own words a little bit, but that's mostly what we used in our time in the 2000s. Um and on a side note, and there was no social media back then, by the way. The very beginning of social media for my generation was MySpace, really. And MySpace came out toward the end of my high school, and then Facebook launched right around that time and beginning of college. And Facebook went crazy. Everyone had a Facebook, and that was the thing, you know. And then Instagram came a few years after that. Um, and but all it did was allow us to message people all the time on there, add friends, you know, post funny things, communicate that way. It all we were doing is really just chatting, really, and sharing
Yeah.
stuff and
Mhm.
saying, today I ate at this place and documenting our life. That became that became my generation's kind of thing. Um, so now it's just evolved into anything and everything and making political stances and um, trying to, you know, like shape. It's almost becoming like a propaganda machine, almost, if not.
It
If
can
not
be used for that.
almost.
Absolutely. It can be used for that.
Yeah.
In my former life, I've been a counselor for and psychotherapist for about 20 years. But for 15 years before that, I was a radio announcer,
Oh, cool.
if you can tell by my mellifluous vocal tones.
You have a great voice. Yeah.
Um, but the only reason I bring that up is because, and even to this day, foreign countries are not allowed to own broadcast outlets in the United States. A foreign country cannot own a majority interest in CBS or ABC or a local television station, anything that has the ability to broadcast, limited only to television and radio, because this law was invented back in the 30s.
Wow.
You know, the FCC came up in the 20s and 30s. And the reason is we don't want a foreign country, perhaps a possibly hostile intended foreign country, to have ownership of our broadcast media because they could pump out propaganda.
Propaganda.
Well, we can't do that in the internet age. And I firmly believe, and I'm sure the CIA is into this, that there are governments with an active intention of using social media
Hmm.
to influence our young people and to pit us against each other.
Yes.
This is a political statement, and we don't have to go too far into politics, but
Yeah.
someone said once that America could not be defeated from the outside, and I believe that that is true, but that we can defeat ourselves from the inside.
From within.
And I think that all of this divisiveness that we're seeing in our culture is on purpose so that we are not united as a people with shared goals and shared passions and history, not so that we are divided so that we can be, and this sounds conspiratorial, but weakened. If not conquered, we can at least be weakened.
Yes.
And people exploit that for their own power. Politicians exploit dividing us against each other to get power. And foreign countries, I think, are exploiting our divisions to
Yes.
weaken us, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Th- I agree, and it's actually I saw it reached to the U.S. Congress level. The implications of that it really has, especially when it comes to TikTok, because TikTok is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance,
mm,
and um, it, there's been speculation that TikTok in the U.S. is simply designed to for people to share nothing of importance, simply um, kind of like idiotic things, mind-numbing things, and nothing of value really, and just people kind of. And I'll be honest, there is a lot of TikTok conversations end up on other platforms like Instagram, and it, a lot of it is females and males um, expressing their kind of disdain for modern dating and relationships, etc. It's almost pitting, you could call it a gender war. It's pitting males and females against each other because nobody's happy. Expectations are through the roof. Technology, you feel like you have unlimited options based on who you're connected to or what have you. So it's on one sense is doing that, and then Um, I also have heard in China, where the company was formed, their algorithms are completely different. Like apparently they only promote science and positive culture and technology and these sort of things on their feed. So
Mhm.
it actually benefits them by being on TikTok in China, but it's not necessarily the case here.
It at least keeps them kind of on the same page. It cohesion, I think, is what I'm the word I'm looking for. There are other cultures that are way more cohesive
Yeah,
than America. Our diversity is what makes us strong, is what makes us great.
yeah,
But we need to be cohesive in our diversity and realize that we're all human beings just trying to do the best we can in this screwed up world. Every single one of us.
yes,
And yet we're being told that they are them and those people and they're the ones that are causing the trouble. And if we could just, and we're just being pitted against each other in any way that we can.
absolutely.
I'm thinking about the 20 years ago, gay marriage was a huge wedge issue.
That was a big topic. Yeah,
The homosexual agenda, they're coming to try to turn your children, they're coming to blah, blah, blah. Well, that has died way down. And now, for the most part, most people are very accepting of gay marriage. And so now they have to have another boogeyman. And what's the new boogeyman? Transgender.
transgender.
That's right. They need to find things to split us and to keep us apart.
Oh yeah. I I don't want to go too far into that area,
Well, we
but
might have already gone down that rabbit hole. I don't know.
that's a
But
big
yes,
one.
we can pull back.
That's a huge rabbit hole. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a topic of discussion all over social media right now. But uh, we were talking about earlier about the idea of oversight and the idea of how can you regulate something,
Yes. Yeah.
and I wanted to touch on that. So is it a fear of the of how far oversight and regulation can be? Because like you said, um, drugs and alcohol are not necessarily good for people in general and from any country. But when you try to regulate them too much or restrict them or ban them, it ends up doing other. It has unexpected consequences as well, like with prohibition and what have you, and
Hmm.
the war on drugs. So, do you see that happening with social media and tech usage in the US
Well,
or ever?
populations can be controlled. Absolutely. North Korea is a great example. I only know what I hear on the news, but I imagine that that is an exceptionally bolted down, controlled society. They don't have no TikTok over in North Korea. They don't have any of that stuff. China, from what I understand, is maybe it's less so than North Korea, but it's still a very controlled society, and they don't get all of the things that we get. You know, their internet is filtered, ours is not, and so we get to the regulation of it. I'm torn because yes, alcohol and drugs are they're terrible for our society in excess,
Yeah,
but trying to make them illegal has not helped because regulating something, you can't regulate someone's desire for pleasure. I'm sorry.
absolutely.
You can't. Freud called it the pleasure principle. The thing that drives our entire id is this
Yes,
quest for pleasure, things that feel good. Why? Because things that feel good tend to be good for us, which goes back to the other conversation.
yes,
But you can't regulate human beings' need for pleasure.
yes,
So somehow in moderation, enough control, but not complete control. And this is where it gets muddy. This is where it gets mushy.
yeah.
Who defines how much is enough control?
That's very true. It's super gray area, and because it it's kind of like two ends of a spectrum, right? Like you could have you could get to the entire you can get to a whole 1984 situation, totalitarian Brave New World, right?
Mhm.
We read that before. We actually read those books, by the way. um, and yeah, that's on one extreme end, right? Complete thought police and like extreme side of control in all aspects of society. And then you have on the other side you have anarchy, right? You have
Yeah.
no rules, no complete chaos, which unfortunately
Complete freedom,
complete
complete
freedom
absolute freedom is chaos. I think
is chaos.
Aristotle might have said that, or somebody back in the really old days, but
Oh
complete
wow,
freedom is chaos.
that is absolutely well said. Yes, and
Well,
eh,
Aristotle said it, so we'll give him the credit.
I'm about to read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius as well. I bought the book and I'm going to read that as well. And yeah, I'm getting into the Greek philosophers. I'm reading more about them, and they're kind of they're one of the earliest known sources of stoicism that I know of, and
Yeah.
looking within, and right, kind of like going along in your expertise there. Yeah.
I'm certainly not an expert in. I took introduction to psychology, I mean philosophy. So I know a couple of quotes here and there, and I probably misattributed the Aristotle quote, but freedom is chaos is where we were coming from. And how do we find the middle ground, you know? And this is where the difficulty is. Where is the middle ground in anything? What's the balance? What's the middle ground? And it's hard.
That 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I I guess it does um people should be empowered to assess for themselves, right? What is beneficial, what is not beneficial. And
Hmm.
it like if we look use the example of obesity in our country today, it's very high, right? But
Yeah.
uh it is very high. That being said, it's like over 60%, or I don't know what it is exactly, but it's pretty high. But, that being said, everyone is free to eat as many burgers as they want, or as many pizzas or donuts, and
Yep.
nobody's gonna like those businesses, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Pizza Hut, they're just food businesses. There's no regulation of like how many they can serve a day or whatever, right? Like
Right. Right.
we're not going to go to that level. uh we know there's enough evidence to support that too much of any kind of food like that, especially processed foods and deep fried foods, is gonna can lead to that.
Yeah.
But nobody's saying we need to regulate, Burger King or whatever. So uh, it comes down to an individual level, right? On how one decides to live and go about it.
Yeah. Ultimately, we have to make the choice. One of those counseling philosophies, we were talking, I think, before the show started about that there are so many different philosophies of psychotherapy. There is no one,
Yeah.
like, this is what mental health is and this is how you get it, like there is with physiological illness like cancer. You don't have different people philosophizing about cancer. You have people researching it, studying it, finding out, and doing it, right? But in mental health, because it has to do with ultimately what does it mean to be human, there are different schools of therapy and philosophy. And one of them is the humanistic school, where mental health or mental unhealth, mental unease as opposed to dis-ease, mental unease comes from not knowing how to fully be ourselves in this world.
Yeah.
There's existential psychotherapy, which is based kind of on existential philosophy, which I know a little bit about. And then there's person-centered counseling theory, which has to do with how do we um, facilitate people's flowering of their innate potential, that all people have innate potential to be and become.
Yes.
and not, as I was about to say, to be something, but
Yes.
no, it's just the verb is better, to be,
To
the
be.
process of being and becoming, and all people have a potential to do that.
Absolutely.
And the psychotherapy that I like to practice is the kind where we investigate, who am I in this world? What choices do I make? What's important to me? How do I choose to interact with other people?
Yeah.
Um, Living consciously and authentically scares the shit out of most people,
100%. Yes.
because living authentically, honestly, genuinely, facing difficult things in ourselves and in the world is very scary. So, more often than not, we tend to avoid these things. And then, but we can't avoid them. We know that they're there, but we can't avoid them. So we're unhappy.
Yes.
Anyway,
It, well said. And it reminds me of, I think Seneca may have said this, but none is more hated than he who speaks the truth, like
ah,
complete,
very
unfiltered
much.
truth. And
Yep.
oh my goodness, I did not realize that to because over the past few years I've grown into try to be as authentic as possible, and I don't have time to like BS too much or waste time with like unmeaningful conversations, even with regular friends or anything,
Hmm.
only to an extent. But yeah, when it's funny when you try to be an authentic person and be true to yourself and say exactly call it like you see it. It We live in a society that gets offended so easily, and the thought of someone like chattering their illusions of whatever they tend to believe,
Hmm.
it is absolutely like it's it's earth shattering for some people for sure. I've seen.
We cannot have a conception of reality. Reality is way too big for any one of us to have a full conception of it. So what we carry around in our brains is our interpretation of what reality is.
Oh man, yeah.
And anyone who quote unquote speaks the truth is saying something that doesn't conform with what this person's world is.
Mm,
And that's very threatening. It's very threatening to them because their world doesn't accept it, you know?
yes. I You have no idea how much can talk about this very topic for hours on end, I would say. um I I've came to the realization we just happen to live in multiple realities. I just came to the realization, and the only way I can frame it is there's objective reality, and then there's subjective reality, and there might be another one that's like a really personal, spiritual something reality,
Hmm.
but uh, for sure, like when people start to disagree on objective reality, that's when like something's really going haywire. Because are you telling me that's not the sun? It doesn't rise in the east and set in the west, or
Yeah.
or the Earth is like any planet. It's spherical in nature. Like, come on, man.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
We
saying?
we have to live in enough of a shared reality that we can coexist. And
Yeah.
all of us have our own perspective on reality, which is very subjective and unique.
Yes.
But most of the time, we have to have at least some general consensus of what is happening.
Yes.
But that's something else that people exploit for power. What is truth? What is reality? And there are media outlets out there and political parties and political groups that have created an entirely different reality.
100%.
And and people live in that reality, and then any fact, let's say let's say the fact that Immigration from Mexico was already at 50-year lows before Trump even took office.
Mm.
Yes, there's a border problem. And yes, every now and again, there are splurges of people. But when you edit that clip and you play it over and over and over and over and over, they can make the illusion
Yes.
that that's happening all the time.
Yeah.
But when you look at the factual data, that immigration was down at 50-year lows, that fact does not want to penetrate the other world that people are exploiting for their own power and their own benefit. So people can get very threatened by ideas that challenge their worldview or their view of themselves. We also have a what's called a self concept,
Yeah.
our conception of who we are, and we create this little fiction in ourselves too. Why do I call it a fiction? Well, because Alfred Adler called it a fiction, and I think he was. Um, but it's a fiction because for the same reason that reality is so vast that we cannot fully comprehend it,
Yeah.
I think that our humanity, our souls, our spirits, our minds are much bigger than we can conceive. So we develop a self concept that, okay, I understand this is me, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And hopefully, a healthy person who is curious and mature, their self concept matures and continues to grow throughout their life. And their concept of who I am and their concept of the world hopefully grows and increases.
Absolutely.
But these are all conceptions. Our conception of what's happening in the world is our perception of it, and our perception of ourselves is our self concept.
Yes, absolutely. And on a like clo- closing the conversation here, coming towards our end, I would say, or what it makes me think of is we kind of hinted at it earlier. Is like now social media has become reality for many, if not
Yeah.
for most. And
And a very skewed, distorted reality
yeah,
because we don't put ugly, unpleasant, embarrassing things up on social media.
absolutely not.
No. And especially young kids, they look at this and they'll think, oh my God, all these people are having so much fun. Oh, they're so happy. Why am I so empty inside? And it makes them feel so much more cut off,
Yeah,
you know? Anyway,
100%.
sorry, you were going on a point and that just kind of jumped out at me.
Please, no, please, no, no problem at all. Yeah, so social media has certainly become. It's not exactly reality, but it's portraying a reality to many,
Hmm.
and I would say anyone my generation or younger, they are 100%. Most of them are on it and are on it on a regular basis, and now they rely upon it for source of information in general, especially politically, and
Yeah.
um and that kind of goes back to the mainstream media in general, whatever side of the political spectrum. uh, it's it seems to be a like a dying concept because
Hmm.
there is no because like uh, every channel is motivated a certain way, and they all lean a direction politically speaking, right? Which means it's a form of, you could say it's a form of propaganda to a certain uh end political spectrum side, and which means they only grasp, they pretty much, their audience they capture is just geared towards that end. That's it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And what this past election has taught me, and I hopefully many, is that a lot of people don't like, they're not buying what they're selling, if you will, what a lot of mainstream media is selling, and
Hmm.
they kind of rely more on where can I get unregulated, uncensored, and kind of information based, posts and
Hmm.
about politics and about either side. And we're going into social Twitter now and Facebook now. Well, I'd say Twitter has now become the source because it's as unregulated as it gets. Because even if you post something factually incorrect, someone can post a a, a fact checking context there.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things that I took away from this past election, you know. And Elon, by the way, Elon Musk, I don't know how you feel about him per se, but he on a podcast episode he did with Joe Rogan, the top podcaster in the world, he said that he believes that people who only consume mainstream media, they in a way they are living in this subjective reality that's different from a lot of the other the world, you know?
Mhm.
That's what it makes me think of.
Yes, and it's impossible for any one media outlet to capture the entire experience because just experience is way too complicated. I'm not as pessimistic about what is called mainstream media because I think if there's a reason that people don't trust the mainstream media is because they were told not to trust it by people who um, wanted to exploit the population's not knowing. They wanted to exploit the population's not knowing for their own benefit. We were talking about this before we started the show, but the whole idea for the quote unquote right wing media came from an idea that germinated in Roger Ailes' head when he was working for Richard Nixon.
Hmm.
And the Washington Post, Woodward and Bernstein, they were doing investigative journalism that brought down a presidency.
Wow.
And what Roger Ailes, I think he was a publicist or something for Nixon, said what we need is an outlet that's going to tell our side of the story, which is, in my opinion, lies. In that minute, he was lying. No, the president is not sicking the FBI or the IRS on his political enemies. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? No, there is no enemies list. No, there is no recording system in the White House.
Yeah.
That was their truth. That was their side of the story. So the germ for Fox News hit Roger Ailes back in 1973, 74, when they were going through Watergate.
Yeah.
So just philosophically, I'm down with there being multiple points of view. And if someone says something that's just whack, other people can come in with facts and counter it like in real time. I think that's cool. But then what happens is people can't, the general populace can't differentiate between who's saying something whack
Yeah.
and the fact checker who's coming in because the people who believe what the whack person says, oh, the fact checker is lying to you. He's with them.
Yes.
He's trying to convince you. So the mainstream media, for all of its faults, at least there are codes of ethics, media journalistic ethics, and there are rules about how you verify whether something is reportable or not.
Hmm.
And there are rules that what you do when you get things wrong. And yes, the mainstream media messes up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's absolutely not perfect, but there is no such regulation on online talk. And
Yes.
what it can do is it can confuse people as to what is real and what's not.
That is true.
That's it. It's like did I say in this conversation that the internet is today's firearm? That my grandfather grew up on a farm, driving huge John Deere tractors and
Yeah.
shooting rifles and shotguns when he was 10 and 11 years old.
Yes.
That's dangerous equipment, right?
Yes.
But they were the tools that he grew up with. And the internet and social media and all of the things that we've been talking about are the tools of life in the 21st century. And
100%.
they are equally destructive. They are equally as powerful as a shotgun or rifle was on the farm, equally as powerful to our modern life, but they are as equally potentially destructive. And we have to teach our kids to use these tools responsibly. And maybe that's
Yeah.
Maybe that's the answer to the regulation question. We can't regulate it, but if we can teach people to use it responsibly and to recognize when they're being spammed or scanned or
Yeah.
I don't know,
Oh, it's a
teach people.
loaded topic. That's true. I absolutely great stuff. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up for today because I otherwise I'll end up going on even more rabbit holes. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, Dr. Brett Manassa.
Mhm.
It's a pleasure to have you, sir, on Just Some Perspective. So we will probably end this here. So if you like this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe for more. And again, thank you for tuning in. This is Mosh. And remember, Just Some Perspective.